proud to be a woman.
Girls and women are
powerful,
beauty,
badass, feminine,
passion,
equality,
power, professional,
diligence,
advocates for change.
Welcome to She Plus, the female empowerment podcast that tells the extraordinary stories of everyday humans. I'm your host, Elise Dean. On today's episode, we spoke with Michelle Zamparetti, founder and CEO of Zamparetti Consulting, about her journey of becoming a resilient female leader. There are three main ways that guests land on She Plus. 1, I found their story and reached out to them for an interview. 2, they found She Plus and reached out to me for an interview. Or 3, someone connected our stories together. That third way might be my favorite way of having new guests on the podcast. And that's how I found Michelle. So, this is a quick shout out to Tori Powell for making this connection. And it's also a call to action for all of you listeners. If you know someone who has a story to tell, head over to shepluspodcast.com and send a message on the contact page. Or just email me at sheis.podcasting@gmail.com. Anyways, the best way I can describe my interview with Michelle is an all-out, empowering, contemplative, and inspiring advice session. Michelle has more than 20 years of professional experience, and she has tons of fantastic advice to offer on how to be the best version of yourself. And that's probably because that's what she does full-time as founder and CEO of Zamparetti Consulting.
So what I do is basically three things. I help organizations and individuals to find their most excellent outcomes. I kind of drive organizations and individuals towards excellence. And I do that through facilitation and training of any type of needs for an organization, whether that would be training for staff, strategic planning, facilitation of leadership and boards. The second thing I do is develop and implement programs. So that's really where my career expertise lies, around utilizing theory and strategy to develop programs and implement those programs and then evaluate their effectiveness. And then thirdly, I have recently received my executive coaching certification. And so I do leadership development and coaching. And that is how I put together my company so that I could really be working with individuals, improving relationships, and giving people the opportunity to do their work better and to develop strategies that created an easier and more effective work outcome.
But her journey didn't actually start there. Before the founding of Zamparetti Consulting, Michelle worked on the innovation leadership team at General Electric, commonly known as GE. She worked at GE for several years, but in December of 2018, she was laid off. As Michelle puts it, you can expect a layoff to happen, but still be completely unprepared to handle it.
You can know something's coming and still not be at all prepared to handle it, especially because in my professional career, I really never struggled to find a position. I never struggled to find a job. I've been very, very fortunate. So even though we knew that things at my organization were coming to an end, we didn't have a specific date. We were told that nobody wanted this to happen, but it was probably going to happen. And yet, emotionally, I was totally unprepared to not be working. It was the most devastating feeling to wake up in the morning and not necessarily have a place to go, or something to do, or somebody that was expecting me. I never realized. I went to a women's college. I have mentored and supported young people, women especially, over the course of my 20-year career. I never realized how much investment I placed on my value as a professional. I never realized how much I defined myself as what I did or how well I did it. I don't think I defined myself by doing a job, but more that I do a job well, or that I do something and I enjoy it and I do it well. And so to wake up and not have something confirmed, even though I, like I said, was applying for positions, it was really devastating. And for a while, I just wanted to like stay in bed. I didn't, I didn't realize I would be depressed, but I was. My mental health took a real toll. I wasn't feeling like I was being particularly nice to my children because I felt like, as embarrassing as this might be to say, being a parent, exclusively a parent, was not my first choice. That was an alternative that I was not willing to accept as my full-time gig. And I was much, much more emotionally sort of just devastated than I expected.
Michelle had to find a way to reinvent herself. So she started applying to and interviewing for jobs, lots of them. But quickly, she came to realize that she wasn't willing to sacrifice her quality of life for just any job.
When you get to a certain point in your career, it's not as easy to find a position because you're more specialized, or you have a higher price tag, or you have expectations of flexibility, or you need certain things as it relates to the other aspects of your life. And as embarrassing as it was to admit in certain interviews, I felt like I had to say those things. Like I'm not willing to put my family second. I'm willing to work as hard as you need me to work, but I have to be home for dinner at night. And I never thought as a feminist I would say that to somebody, but I felt like it wasn't fair to lower my expectations or standards of what I needed to live a full life. I think that what really was the crux of my emotional state was that I had to figure out how to be honest both with myself and with potential employers in a way that felt authentic, right? I didn't want to lie and say that it didn't matter how much I worked, but I also wanted potential employers to understand that I'm willing to work as much as it takes to do a great job. But I have to do that within the parameters of what I also need to do for all the other aspects of my life.
And so, in January of 2019, Zamperetti Consulting came to life. Michelle had finally crafted that role that fit her needs, made her happy to get up in the morning, and allowed her to be home for dinner with her family. But if you know anything about launching a company or organization, it's that it takes time to grow and see results. And pretty much right around the 1-year birthday of Zamperetti Consulting, coronavirus hit the U.S.
I built this company, and then, sort of right at the point that things were starting to take off, we have been experiencing a significant economic downturn. And I think a lot of my projects were put on hold, or were delayed or even canceled. So I'm definitely not where I expected to be even almost 2 years into this. I still love getting up in the morning and trying to figure out how I'm going to make ends meet. But I would say that I've definitely continued to suffer from periodic imposter syndrome and depression around, or emotional stress around this. Reinventing yourself isn't necessarily starting your own company or doing something different than what you've always done. To me, what I realized is that this idea of reinventing yourself, especially when your environment is unexpected, so a pandemic, a layoff, a catastrophic illness, you have to trust yourself to go with your gut and understand what it is that is going to be okay to do. And you also have to give yourself a break, is what I learned, is you have to say it's okay to be sad. It's okay to take the day and stay in bed. It's okay to watch movies on Netflix all day and then try to get back at it tomorrow. I think where we get into trouble, both as women and as in this case, professionals, is we're trying to make everybody else happy at the expense of our own, our perhaps our own mental health or our own happiness. And so we can't always be perfect for everyone else. And it's okay to give yourself a break from that expectation.
But building yourself up again can be hard. It can be difficult to find your flow again, especially when you've been knocked down. Like Michelle said, it's okay to take a day to watch your favorite TV series, eat tons of cheese puffs, and wallow. But the process of actually getting up again and putting in the work to start over is challenging. It requires something called resilience. While researching for this podcast episode, I actually learned that resilience is a psychological quality. Per Psychology Today, being resilient allows people to, quote, be knocked down by the adversities of life and come back at least as strong as before. It's a quality that Michelle knows well.
One trait that I think I realized about myself that had to really be exercised during this time is resilience. I think it's a perfect definition of everything that's going on right now. There are plenty of people who are in far worse situations than I am. And being resilient is very hard and it's very exhausting. And it's not necessarily something that anyone ever teaches you how to do. We have to remember that we are capable of resilience and we are capable of change and we are capable of fighting. And I think you asked about the end of the tunnel. It's sort of like if things suck, just keep going because eventually they'll not be the same. Whether or not they'll still suck, who knows? But, if the going is tough, just keep going. And it's hard to remember to do that. I've been very fortunate that I was able to not have a salary for a little while and not be homeless as a result. Though after a year and a half, it's hard. It's hard to make ends meet still, but I believe that this is going to work.
And some of you might be thinking, okay, sure, this is great and all, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. How in the world am I supposed to teach myself to be resilient when my life has been completely turned upside down? And it's also not my fault that it was turned upside down. You'd be right. That's definitely something I'd be thinking too. It's all about asking for help.
We've never experienced anything like what we're experiencing now. And looking to find people to support you, calling your friends, asking for help. It's something that we're very bad at doing. And we have to remember that nobody's going to look down on us for asking for that help or even just calling for a shoulder to cry on. You need that sometimes, that release and that realization that you're not in this by yourself. So practicing resilience, giving yourself a break, being gentle with yourself if you're able, and asking people to help you and hold you up and support you. All things that maybe women especially are not all that good at all the time. But those things are really important to practice right now.
Coming up after the break, Michelle talks specifics about practicing resilience in quarantine, and we discuss her mentorship work with female professionals.
This message is brought to you by She Plus Podcast.
At She Plus, lifting up stories and voices is an important part of the work we do, which is why I love shopping for products at Mess in a Bottle, a Black-owned business that aims to give voice to the voiceless. All of Mess in a Bottle's products display important messages that you'll be proud to wear while quarantined in your house. From t-shirts emblazoned with the word fearless to sweatshirts that say, as strong as the woman next to me, you're bound to find something that speaks to you. Check out my latest post to see what I bought from Mess in a Bottle. Shop now at messinabottle.com. Welcome back. On this episode of She Plus, we're talking with Michelle Zamperetti of Zamperetti Consulting about practicing resilience as a female professional. Coronavirus has fundamentally shifted the way we work now and probably the way we will work in the future. In an interview with Nicholas Bloom, a Stanford University economist and professor, Bloom says a whopping 42% of the U.S. labor force is working from home. 33% of the labor force isn't working at all due to the severe layoffs nationwide, and that remaining 26% comprises essential business workers. Bloom calls this a working-from-home economy. And he's not wrong. Major companies like Twitter, REI, and Zillow announced plans for employees to work remote indefinitely. And other companies like Google, Microsoft, and Spotify have extended work-at-home plans throughout at least early 2021. But working from home can be kind of hard, especially if you live with dogs or children and you have Zoom meetings throughout the day, or if you're like me and record podcast episodes. But Michelle says in order to practice resilience in quarantine, you have to be authentic about your situation.
Part of the resilience comes from being authentic always with your needs so that people can recognize that you can still do what they want, even with the needs that you have. And it's okay. Maybe this online world that we're living in is going to help show some of that. But I've even said to men, you don't get asked the questions about whether or not your family or your partner or your significant other needs you, because people make an assumption that somebody else is taking care of that. So I think in this virtual environment we're in, I think you should let your kids walk in on your Zoom meetings, because your colleagues need to know that you're doing a great job despite the fact and because of the fact that you're multitasking. So instead of hiding that, show it so that they understand that you're still doing a great job. And that's, women are doing that because the kids just pile in. But I've said that to some men. I was like, we need you to do that too, so that women aren't looked at as the only ones who are getting interrupted on the Zoom calls, that women aren't the only ones who are expected to stop working to help with the homeschooling.
And I know, I've said this several times, but that can be hard, especially for women. Whether it's a Zoom conference call from home or a job interview for a coveted position, it's challenging sometimes to be authentic and honest, because then we might get called pushy or aggressive or bitchy.
One of the other pieces of that resilience question is really around something that links directly to women in leadership. And that is that we still have to fight really hard to be taken seriously. And it is very difficult because of that, to be honest. Like when I was saying about an interview or an HR conversation where you're like, I can't work in an office past 6 p.m., for example. That's a hard thing for somebody to say, because what you're showing is your weakness. You're showing that you're not as available perhaps as another person who doesn't have those external pressures. So we as women have to be more direct without being aggressive. We have to be more capable of staying strong without coming across as pushy. And we also have to balance this reality of all the other things that happen in our lives. Because if we don't, I find that genetically, we're just sort of not our best selves. And yet, organizations and companies don't want to know about your personal life.
Michelle believes that as women, we have the ability to fight for our wants and needs, even and especially in a professional environment.
That ability to fight for what we need is very hard, because it's much easier as a woman to say, oh yeah, I can just work whenever you need me and I can be there and I'm really good at that. And then to feel really mad at yourself that you didn't say, wait, that doesn't make me happy. That doesn't make me as excellent as I can be, both for myself and for you. I want to be both the best employee that I can be. And I also want to be the best non-employee, because if I'm mad at you, then I'm not good to them. And if I'm mad at them, I'm not good to you. So it's a constant struggle. And I think that we are quick in a leadership position to retreat, but instead we have to use that resilience to say, let me tell you a story about that time that I ran that big meeting and I kicked butt. And yet I had, my kids in the background and I had to be doing homeschool during the breaks and whatever it was. And, so the resilience is practiced all the time, and I forget too, but it's just sort of that keep on plugging mentality, I think, and remembering that we're a lot stronger than we think we are.
And what Michelle says here really resonated with me during our interview. I cannot express how often I find myself agreeing to terms or situations that don't really fit with my own needs. Why do I do that? I think it goes back to what Michelle said earlier, how women often are trying to make everyone else happy at the expense of our own mental health and happiness. Remember how I said my interview with Michelle was an empowering, contemplative, and deeply insightful powwow sesh? Yeah, this is what I meant by that. And that leads nicely into Michelle's work as a mentor to other female professionals. She serves on the board of Preparing Women to Lead, a national organization that provides training and support to college-aged women entering into the workforce.
As I've watched people who worked for me or were interns for me and where they've gone in their lives, that, wow, they've come back to me and said, it was because of you that I felt confident enough to do this, or that I was willing to try, or that, you're the best boss I ever had, even if it was 10 years ago. And that has been I don't know exactly how to define it except for as a point of pride. And so to me, I look at the opportunity to be involved with more junior professionals or people looking to understand what their career path is as a way to just listen, and a way both to be learning and sharing experiences that give people that boost of confidence that they need to trust themselves. And sometimes when I encourage somebody to trust themselves, I trust myself a little bit more. I think I'm often guilty of not trusting myself or not believing in myself as much as I should. And then I remember that I have people that I could call and they would say, oh yeah, it's because of you that I'm now this executive leadership at, Price Waterhouse or whatever. And I don't know why that is, but it's because of whatever relationship we fostered and whatever opportunity I gave them, both to try new things and to fail at new things and to never be scared to talk about those potential failures or successes. So I think it's that belief in fostering relationships and really being proud of other successes that has given me such a I don't know what the word is, has given me kind of such direction around my leadership approach. It's that collaborative, relationship heavy experience, because then people trust you and people want to do good work for you, not because you can pay them all the money in the world, but because you're good to them, because you care about them. And because when they have an idea, you're like, yeah, go try it. Let's see. I didn't come up with that. So let's see if it works. And people like that. I think people just want to be trusted and heard for who they are and what they bring.
And as for right now, Michelle knows that the future of work might look different. She just hopes to craft her work with Zamperetti Consulting into something that makes her happy.
I want to craft this over the hopefully next couple of decades into something that I can pick and choose the things that make me smile and the relationships that are really fun and the things I can say, wow, that was cool, wasn't it? We did that together. And yet still have the ability to say, no, I don't need to do that right now because I'm going to take a couple weeks off in July or something to be with my family. And I really believe as a working parent, I've always said that I want my kids to see me working, just like I want them to see their grandparents are working, or their aunts and uncles, or their friends' parents, or their father. They need to understand that work looks so different for everybody, whether it's teaching, doctor, nurse, office person, pizza delivery guy. I think they need to understand that what it's about is getting up in the morning and being happy. And I'm happy when I'm working. And so I want them to realize they can do whatever they want in the world. They can do whatever they want in the world, but I just want them to be content.
That's it for this episode of She Plus. If you're looking for more She Plus content, head over to our brand new She Plus YouTube page. New videos come out every week, including podcast episodes, inside scoop videos, and more. As always, follow us on social media to keep up with the latest at she_plus_pod. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.